Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful duo of Simone and Lourdes Viray. How you doing today, ladies?
Doing
I'm doing
amazing,
good.
doing
Doing good.
escaping in Vegas over here, and I've got my Silence of the Lambs shirt on for the occasion, which I'm very proud of.
Totally a horror film, by the way. Like a hill I will die on. I have a lot of people that are like, no, it's more of like a cop drama. I'm like, yeah, but it's not. It's a horror movie. So,
It's a horror movie, especially if you look at what it's influenced and how, like Maniac, the remake,
yeah.
totally Silence of the Lambs coded. I'm gonna die on that hill with you.
There's a scene in The Silence of the Lambs where she's walking and a dude throws jizz at her face. There is nothing more horrific than that. Like, nothing in this world is scarier than that, in my opinion.
That
Like,
is so true.
at that moment, I'd be like, oh, that guy eats people. Don't give a shit. I'm going to die. I'm dead right now. My whole life is over. Like, that would be a wrap for me. So, but ladies, before we talk about why you are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. So we'll talk about you first, Shay. Shay is a Las Vegas born and raised native that's worked on many student projects and short films, as long as a few feature films in various technical and artistic roles. Some of her titles include Shellfish, Cult Friends, The Last Death of 1962, Christmas Slasher. Woo! And it's funny because Christmas Slasher is a big one for me because I know Destiny, so that was a really cool thing to hear about Christmas Slasher. Now you also are a comic book artist and writer, and your first graphic novel, Just Another Meat-Eating Dirtbag by Michael Anthony, was published in November of 2022 by Street Noise. So obviously you got a lot of feathers in your cap. So let's start off with what got you started in acting.
So what got me started in acting? I don't have too many roles under my belt now, but it's something that it's an art that I've always been fascinated with. A lot of people are fascinated with because it's so alluring. But for me, it's just if there's any avenue whatsoever that I can take in order to tell a story, because at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller, but it's also kind of hard to advertise, when you're trying to get a job. So acting is definitely one of those avenues. I remember being 12 years old and just, starting to really actually start paying attention to movies. And it could sound whatever, the young adult dystopian shit hit, and I saw The Hunger Games with J-Law or whatever, and I was like, this lady's a freaking good actress.
No, you're fine. You can say it. You can say it. I'm not bothered.
Sorry, it's that Vegas vocabulary there. And I remember Donald Sutherland in the behind the scenes being like, this young woman is such a fantastic actor. Like, she'll just be joking around, having a great time and making friends with everybody behind the scenes. But when it's a call to action, she just gets into it. As a kid and learning about the art of acting in the first place, I was just like, whoa, I can do that, kind of thing in my brain, obviously. But yeah, acting is definitely another one of those avenues. And that's why I got into art, and art, it bleeds into all these different things, including film. Film has always been my number one, but art has always been the most accessible. Which is why I'm also like, we're directing a movie, but yeah, just doing what I can. I have a horror comic coming up here pretty soon. It's serialized, so it's gonna be a big one. But yeah, just whatever I can do to tell a story. It's like what other directors say, it's or Guillermo del Toro more recently. He's just like, I don't act because, or I don't want to direct. I don't direct because I want to direct. I direct because I have a story to tell.
Sure.
And it's just torture just not being able to tell that story. So that's where I come from.
See, and that's awesome. And like you said, also, when you're a writer and an illustrator, of a comic book artist, you're also directing in a different way. When you're putting the ink to paper and you're doing all these different things, you're directing, but you're just directing the pen to the paper and the words to the bubble. So, I mean, like I said, you are a writer, you're a publisher, you're an illustrator, but you are also a director in your own right that way. So, like I got a long box right here, huge comic book fan. So I definitely, It's
That's your new show?
this is Creep Show, my newest Creep Show comic, and it won't
Oh,
show, of course, but I'll
that,
turn the filter off after we're done. But I got a whole long box over here full of all my old favorite, comic books. I got like some Creep Shows in there. I've got some of the early Amazing Spider-Man stuff. Um, I was a huge fan of the Superior Spider-Man. For people that don't know, the Amazing Spider-Man comic ended at number 700, and it ended with Peter Parker and Doc Ock switching bodies, and Peter Parker dying inside of Doctor Octopus's dying body. And then the next chapter was called the Superior Spider-Man. So it was Otto Octavius inside of Peter Parker's body playing Spider-Man, and he was like almost like this like vigilante Spider-Man, where he was like he had a guy down on his knees in a subway and blew his fucking head off, like right in front of everybody on the subway, and they're like, Spider-Man, and he's like, the Superior Spider-Man. Like it's one of my favorite. It was only like a limited 30 run arc, but it is beautiful. Like it's one of my favorite comic arcs because it has a lot of darkness into the Spider-Man world. But I'm rambling on about myself, and we're not here to talk about me. People know me. I want to talk about Lourdes for a second. Also, Las Vegas-based filmmaker and actress. You got your experience in various positions of filmmaking and acting with photography, videography, and film through the College of Southern Nevada. You also won a Student Emmy Award in the National Academy of Television, Art, and Science Pacific Southwest as a student craft director for Allure of Darkness 2021, following 5 awards and 4 selections in various film festivals. Before I finish, fucking congratulations. You are also known for working on With You, I Found Me in 2022 and Dissolvers in 2020. So I want to bounce back to these awards real quick because that's amazing. Allure of Darkness. Is there someplace that people can see that film right now?
So, basically, I have a trailer out right now on my YouTube channel at Lourdes Alden. The movie has not been released yet because I want to save it for a special day for everyone that wanted to see it. I'm trying to figure out a date, time, and place to do so. If I do have that, I will let you guys know through my social media and for everyone to see it.
Mhm. Well, and Lourdes just gave you a big hint at what I'm about to drop because you guys don't have to go far looking for those social media links or the YouTube links because they're right in the description. So make sure you're following these ladies on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel because not only are you going to help to build their horror family, but you're going to stay up to date on all the amazing things that they've done, but that they're working on in the future. So if you want to stay up to date with all those, which I know you do because you're watching the video, all those links are down in the description. So please make sure you're following them, showing your support to them, because there's nothing more that we love here at Sledgehammer Horror than trying to build the horror community as far and wide as we can. And we can do that by supporting our directors, actors, actresses, illustrators, comic book designers, directors by following them on social media and letting them know that we have their back. We're ready to watch their products. So before we get into why you're here, I started with you last time, Shay. So, Lourdes, do you have anything coming up here in the near future that you can tell us about?
So all I'm working on right now is being a producer, special effects makeup artist, a production manager, with Shay Simone as director for I'm Everywhere. That's what I'm working on at the moment. When I'm not working on film, I also have a YouTube channel, TikTok, and Instagram at Lourdes Alden, where I do a lot of makeup tutorials. A year ago, I did a Halloween series content where I do makeup tutorials and outfits. The
Yeah.
most very last and recent one of my Halloween series is Maxine Minx from X. I did her entire makeup and outfit inspired look. You guys can check that out. I also did Jennifer's Body in 2021, as well as The Grudge back in 2018. I did a lot of like makeup series ranging from MTV Teen Wolf, CW, The Vampire Diaries. I have some more in the future, hopefully coming soon this year.
I can't wait. And you just brought up a film that we've talked about on this channel a lot with Jennifer's Body. And I always tell people, if you are into marketing or you are into, trying to get budgets for a film and trying to promote a film, Jennifer's Body is the #1 trailer to watch to learn how to never market a movie, because that was the worst marketed movie I have. It's up there with like Halloween Ends and the House of Wax remake. Like the House of Wax remake was like, hey, you don't like Paris Hilton? Come watch her get killed in our movie. Like that was all it was. And Jennifer's Body was like, hey, this is a sexy girl. Come watch this sexy girl be a sexy girl. Like it's like there's a lot more depth to. I didn't even watch Jennifer's Body when it came out. I watched it for the first time probably a year and a half ago and was blown away at how fucking amazing and ahead of its time that movie was, especially in the feminist movement. Like that was just like I'm a woman, I'm a badass, I'm gonna do what the fuck I want to do. I'm gonna eat your fucking soul. And I was like, get him. So
such a great.
I love.
I'm so glad that you brought that up too. I was like, where is he going with this? Like,
Yeah.
watch the like. I mean, as a bad example, absolutely. And I feel like films. I mean, it's always films. I mean, House of Wax is the House of Wax. You know, it's just a movie just to enjoy. I feel like people just like to poop on it just because Paris Hilton is in it. I watched it just recently. I'm like, this isn't that bad. Are you kidding me?
The practical effects in that movie are phenomenal. Like the practical effects throughout that movie, like we just did a versus episode on it where we talk about the original, we talk about the remake, what we like about each one, and verse them against each other. And I had a lot of good to say about that remake after rewatching it, like the practical effects, the depth of the family dynamic, a lot of the foreshadowing that happens throughout the movie, a lot of the symbolism of the conjoined twins being back together or being split in half. Like a lot of that movie really blew me away because all I remembered was like, oh yeah, Paris Hilton's in this movie and she dies. That's all I remembered about it. But then like you go and watch and you're like, damn, they really missed the mark. Like that one of the best practical effect horror films of the 2000s, and no one talks about it. Like the whole mansion was built out of wax, and you have all these melting wax figures. It's just like in an era that horror was trying to jump on the CGI bandwagon. That movie was like, fuck that. We're going to stay practical and we're going to whoop ass. And they did. Movie's phenomenal. I love the practical effects in that movie. If nothing else, watch that movie for the great practical effects. The super glue on the mouth, the fingers getting cut off. Like there's so many great effects in that movie that you watch and you're just like, oh, don't do it. Oh, you did it. I told you not to.
Oh, the scene where he's the first victim, he's sitting on the piano and he's like, the guy like, hey, what are you doing here? We gotta go look for whoever and stuff. And he's just like, hello? And he pokes him and his skin goes, and it just goes in.
That traumatized me as a child. I could not sleep for days. And it didn't help the fact that the next morning it was so windy and like the House of Wax DVD was facing straight at me. And it was so creepy, man.
Dude, I completely agree. I just think it's funny that like I'm a huge person. Like when I talk about how a film should be marketed, in my opinion, look at Barbarian. I thought Barbarian had an amazing marketing team. Talk to me.
They did not give anything away. They're just like, here's a movie.
Yep. And the newer movie Talk to Me. I thought Talk to Me did great with its run. Smile, when they had people smiling out at baseball parks and stuff. Like that was just, you had no idea what was going on. It's just creepy ass people smiling everywhere. Like, okay, yeah, I got to check this out. So, man, I am so excited because you talked about I'm Everywhere, and I didn't get to talk to you about that yet, Shay. What can you tell people? I don't obviously spoiler free because we're still in the production side of things, but what can you tell people a little bit about I'm Everywhere?
So a little bit about I'm Everywhere. So this is and we've kind of ramped it up now, and you can read more about it in the links in our Indiegogo, which are in all of our social medias and all that. But we are, and this is kind of humongous news on our part, but this is we're ramping it up to an actual horror anthology that is completely directed by women. So every single segment in this anthology is going to be directed by a different woman. And
that's fucking amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often, if at all. And you know, the last time that happened where it was like, say, an all-woman directed anthology, it didn't do very well. Which I can promise you it will be at least the quality, I think, will be better. If you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I got brought on to direct this segment for the project. Lourdes did the original, so I'm directing the prequel. So this is centered on the antagonist of the series. And basically, so you know how you sometimes there are just people who you're forced to work with or forced to be around every now and then, and they're a complete dick. You know, they just suck. There's a specific term for it, and they call it an energy vampire or an emotional vampire. So we're kind of taking it a little bit more literally in this movie, where it's this guy who just happens to be a vampire, and he is also a super narcissist, an egoist. You can think of, you know, just those internet celebrities who just do the most whack stuff.
Yeah.
And make it all about them and make themselves the victims, or oh, I got to be on top all the time and blah. We've seen a lot of those
Sure.
in this. So it's about that kind of persona, that kind of character. But we go a little bit more into the crux of who he is, how he acts on set, in his origin story. So we actually get to see, in a scene that's more of a period piece, his transition into a vampire, which on my behalf I can say is going to be super bloody, super gory. I'm super excited for that. We even have an animator who's a close friend of mine who's doing stop motion animation, to add on some of the gore and all of that, which I'm super excited about. But yeah, I'm Everywhere is about a vampire named Victor. He's a narcissist and he's wreaking havoc. And yeah, it's just a little short about him that takes place within the Allure universe, the cinematic universe that Lourdes has created.
Well, I can't wait, because I've always said, like, with vampires, and it doesn't matter, even if you go back to Nosferatu, you know, and obviously you got your Dracula and you got things like that, but the sexiness that comes along with vampires, you know, there's all, like, you talk about how they're not, I feel like even, you know, the Lost Boys, Fright Night, you know, Jerry Dandridge, you know, there's always this air of sexiness and narcissism that comes along with the best vampires. You know, they know they're sexy. They know that they're hypnotic. They know they could have any woman that they want. They're just that to me is what makes a vampire a vampire. The ability to, like I said, be almost hypnotic to women, you know, like they are their own aphrodisiac. And it's just, I love it. I love vampires. I love the sexiness. Horror at times loses the fact that it's supposed to be sexy, and vampires always bring it back to the fact that horror is a very, and just recently, like you were talking about with X brought back how horror can be sexy, and how Kid Cudi walks around with a dangerous weapon in his pants. But that movie was just absolutely phenomenal, and it blew me away. Like, when there's so many things about X that I was just like, this is how you make a horror movie. This is what you do to create a solid, yes. And then, you know, you go to Pearl, and Pearl, in my opinion, has the best monologue ever. When there's that unbroken shot at the end of Mia Goth just giving that monologue, I had goosebumps in the theater. I looked at my wife. That's why I've been married to my wife since high school. You know, me and Ashley have been together for 18 years. And, you know, when I hear about all these, you know, a fully woman directed movie like that, to me, I think about my wife and how important she is and how smart she is. And when you get these things like that, to me, it also breaks the stereotype of, oh, look, there's a woman, she's sexy. Like, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. You know, when you go to a woman's YouTube channel and, you know, you're doing a makeup tutorial, damn, you're sexy, girl. Yeah, we know, but she also just did a lot of work in editing and putting this makeup on. How about you talk about how great her work is? So when you get a bunch of, you know, when you have the women that are writing, directing, producing makeup effects, it's not just, wow, these women are pretty. It's, wow, these women directed, wrote, starred in, did everything, you know. So then it kind of puts the respect on the name, you know, like, call me by my name, not by my looks. So you guys doing this is such an important thing. So just don't ever lose sight of the fact how important what you're doing is to make people remember you're not just a face. You're not just the woman behind a man or a woman behind the woman. You know, you are putting your name, your stamp on this as a writer, a director, a producer, an actor, a special effects artist. Amazing. And I'm so proud of you guys, and I can't wait to share it with the world. And you talked about Indiegogo and funding and how that's on your social media. It's also down in the description, guys, so make sure you're checking that out. So now, obviously, I'm Everywhere, vampires, horror. In order for that to start for you somewhere, in order for you to do that, I should say, horror had to start for you somewhere. So I'm going to start with you again, Shay. We're going to go back to the past. and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Shay, the first horror movie you watched was
Jaws, 1975.
Dun. We've talked about it. Jaws, Halloween, and Psycho. People that have not seen those movies still know the score. That's how important the score to those movies are. If you've never seen Psycho, you still know, like you know that. If you've never seen Halloween, you know that piano lick. If you've never seen any time you go swimming, there's always that one dickhead, me, that's going da-dun, da-dun. You always have that one douchebag. You're like, oh, it's that fucking guy. Yeah, that's me. What's up? So, and we'll get back to Jaws here in a second, but Lourdes, I would like to go to you. The first horror movie that you watched was?
So my first horror movie that I watched is Dracula in 1992. That's like the first one I ever remembered.
What I love about that is like now, and we'll get more into this later, but now you're working on vampire horror movies, and it started with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so ironic how that works. And we'll get back to that in a second. But I started with you a second ago, Shay. So I'm going to start with you this time, Lourdes. We know you were very, very young the first time that you had watched Dracula. But what we're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula, right?
Bram Stoker.
Okay. Do you remember who you were with when you had seen it for the first time?
I was with my sister when I watched it. She was probably doing her chores around the house, doing homework, cooking. Cannot remember, but I do know that I watched it on VHS tape. It happened to be right next to the Titanic VHS tape. You know, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. So it's like right next to that. So I'm like, okay, let's just. My sister happened to choose Dracula with Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman or Goldman. Yeah.
Goldman. Yeah. And it's amazing. Like, how different would your life have been today if your sister had chose Titanic that day? You know, like, it just, you know, like the way, the butterfly effect, you know, like how things would be different if they would have, you know, we could be sitting here having a podcast about how My Heart Will Go On changed the world. But instead, we're talking about how amazing Dracula is. So, we know that you were a very young lady watching it with your family when you had seen it, but now I want to bounce back to you for a minute, Shay. We're talking about Jaws, which I've talked about is probably one of the most influential horror movies of all time. And obviously they're still doing things, you know, the Meg 2, Sharknado. We're still getting all these, you know, action-packed shark type movies that still can never touch what Jaws did. A very impactful movie that is very influential. But what would you say the scene was that affected you the most?
Ooh, that affected me the most was and this is probably going to answer a lot of your questions moving forward, but the final fight, the final showdown, but more specifically if we're doing it moment by moment. And like, this is a spoiler, so if you haven't seen Jaws,
the movie's from fucking 75, guys. If you haven't seen it, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I get it. There's a ton of movies that I still haven't seen, you know, and people are just like, oh, it's like 100 years old. Why haven't you seen it by now? There's a lot of movies. There's a lot of fish in the ocean, you know? So just pause, watch the movie, please. And now I will talk about it. But Quint, the scene with Quint, he was my favorite. He's always been my favorite character. I'm just like, he's so fabulous. He's going around. He knows exactly what he's talking about. I'm like, I can relate, sir. And no one's taking him seriously. And then, boop, he's out like that. When Bruce the shark comes around, he just took out Hooper, as far as we know, and he busted the cage, and now the orca, the ship, is busted, and the orca is like flooded now. It's teetering, and the Bruce is able to jump up onto the ship, and it's going like this. It's bowing down, and Bruce is just angry at this point. It's just like an angry shark. He's the Cujo of sharks. So he's just going after these people just to mess with them, right? And who goes down first? Like, in the actuality of the entire movie, Quint is the one out of the three main characters to die. And the way that he died, when I was watching it, I remember, to me, it was like when Quint slides down, he can't get a grip. His hand is crushed by one of the bottles. I think it was a propane tank or something like that. And he just couldn't hang on to anything. Bruce is chomping and he just slides right into Bruce's mouth. Bruce is chomping. He's screaming bloody murder. And then Bruce does the final. And I just remember, and it's when you're watching it as an adult, obviously it doesn't have the same, maybe not, but when I was, what was it? I saw it for the first time. It was my first horror movie. I think I was 14, 15 years old. The final chomp, and then Quint just goes, and there's this very audible snap of something popping. Blood flushes out of his mouth, and then he goes limp, and he gets dragged into the ocean, never to be seen again. And that was the most impactful scene to me, because Spielberg was so purposeful in making this guy such a pompous butthead, but at the same time so charming and so likable. Yeah, I said it. But also the actor, forgive me, I can't remember his name.
You remember that he survived out at sea when he has that whole speech about how he survived out at sea. Just to lose now to the shark is so heartbreaking. Like, it's such a heartbreaking moment in the film because even as an adult, like, you agree, like, there's some things that Quint does where you're like, okay, I get you're a dick, but I see where you're coming from. Like, I get it, and you are actively rooting for everybody on the Orca. You're like, you see your dad, your crazy uncle, your dad's friend. Like, you see these people that are in your own personal life that you can relate to, and you're like, oh, come on, we got to make it out of here.
Yeah, I mean, would I have traded Hooper in for Quint? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Hooper, so nothing wrong with Hooper necessarily, but he's a little he's a little bit pompous asshole in his ways or whatever. But just that moment. But like you were talking about, the whole famous monologue that Quint had about surviving I believe it was the USS Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Surviving that. So Spielberg is the master of setup, and rewatching Jaws, actually, you kind of see how much Spielberg always plays his influences on his sleeve. You see a lot of Hitchcock in there.
I don't know if you know this or not, but one of the most infamous scenes in Jaws, at least to me, is the shark tooth jump scare. That's one of the most infamous moments in the film. Do you know that was not in the first cut of the film?
Really?
Look this up. I'm being completely genuine. They talk about it on the special features of the Blu-ray. They did a test screening, and Spielberg was like, we need something. We need something else. He took a crew to his house in his swimming pool, and they filmed that moment in the bottom of his swimming pool to get a jump scare. And at that moment, when I'm listening to them talk about this, I'm like, that's what makes Steven Spielberg, is he watches this movie like Jaws. And that's one of my favorite, that's one of the first real jump scares I remember, when you see the head come out when he's going for the shark tooth. And Spielberg did a test screening, and he was like, we're missing something. There's something here that we're missing that we need to add to this film, to add that layer of just anxiety and fear. And that's what he came up with. And they went and filmed it in a day, and they added it to the film. And it's just like, holy shit, this guy's a fucking genius. Like, that is just the smarts of that guy, just to do a test screening and be like, if that scene had never happened, who knows? But I'm pretty sure Jaws would have been okay, even without that scene. But that just adds that much. And it's just, I think it's a beautiful moment in the film. And I think it's even more beautiful when you realize that he just, on the spur of the moment, was like, we need to add something. Everybody come to my house tonight at 7 p.m. with cameras. I got an idea. Like, it's just brilliant. So,
really, he's super, super smart about things too, because it's just like being a director, you have to invest in so much. You have to drag people out to make your movie sometimes, and the conditions aren't always great. People get sick, the weather conditions suck. You could take Star Wars as a glaring example of that, filming out in the desert. But that moment, I remember when I was watching Jaws for the first time, the head pops out and you see like worms coming out of his eyeball, eye socket, or whatever. That's when I was like, damn, okay, this film.
Put the tooth back. Put the tooth back.
Put it in milk.
So as
You-
in,
It's
go ahead.
already a horror movie from the first scene, but that was when like my muscles were
Yeah.
clenched, but that also sets the tone for the rest of the movie.
Exactly. Now, as influential as Jaws is, we can make the argument that Dracula is just as influential because without, and I'm talking, even back with, the Universal Dracula with Bela Lugosi, or when you had, your Hammer horror films with the really gothic Dracula, where we really started to get the sexiness of who Dracula is. Dracula is still very influential. We just got Renfield, which is a chapter in the Dracula story that just came out. So, Lourdes, what would you say your favorite scene from Bram Stoker's Dracula was?
So my favorite scene from Bram Stoker Dracula was Lucy Westenra's death. Spoiler alert. Where her head gets decapitated, and then her little head just like flies off the screen, spinning around, and then you just next cut to the scene. It's just like a raw meat of some sort. I can't remember if it's steak or ham, but it was a weird meat getting cut, and then you see Keanu Reeves, and a bunch of vampire hunters just eating lunch. Sunday brunch. And that was like my first impacting memory as like a little baby. That's all I remembered. Every time I tell these type of like my earliest memories from like Lucy Westenra's death, they were like, Lourdes, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine.
That's so great. That's amazing. And it is a moment in the film where it's almost comical in a way, how you had this decapitation right into brunch. Like I love how they were able to do something like that. So we know in Hollywood right now, especially remakes, requels, sequels, kind of all the rage. People love to do that right now. So Shay, is Jaws a movie that you would like to see remade today?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And okay, so I'm not opposed. I'm never opposed to a remake, a sequel, anything, because I hate a pet peeve of mine when it comes to any art form, when it comes to film, especially, is when there have to be rules. Some of those rules are useful and necessary for certain productions.
Sure.
But why do there always have to be rules? So no, I remakes are fine, but when it comes to studios or distributors basically just cashing it in,
Yeah.
I do have a problem. But with Jaws, I don't see that working. And even if they did say it was the best that it could be, the best scary shark movie that there could be, that's fine and that's great. And if that is in the stars, then let it be. But personally, I would not greenlight that, because you like, we've all heard it. It's like Jaws, but blah blah blah.
Yeah.
how many that's been written on the backs of like horror movie DVD covers and all of that. And
It's
I
like
think
Jaws, but with alligators.
exactly, yeah, that whole thing. It's become a gimmick. And gimmicks are fine too. You can do great things with gimmicks, cliches, and tropes, and all this stuff. It can still be a creative piece of work. But then you have stuff like The Meg and The Shallows and Sharknado and just all these other things, and it doesn't have the same impact. And where I'm at is, I guess, I don't know what the term would that be, because I'm all for contemporary works and all of that. Like Talk to Me is a great, I love Talk to Me. But what worries me about the influx of all of these remakes is that it's, how they're saying it's for the younger generation. That's that's BS, dude. That is such BS. Really, they're just trying to cash in on people, like the actual impacted generations nostalgia, bring their kids in, to distract their kids with, or whatever, especially with, our technology and just things being different. That's fine. And you can bring a lot to the plate when it comes to a remake, but a remake, in my opinion, still should be taken as a form of adaptation. You need to be doing something creative with that. It needs to be different. It just needs to be good. Different is good. That's where I'm at. And if it was a Jaws remake, if there was one, it wouldn't be me. I would not be the one for that. I would go very timid and very hesitant to see such a thing.
I am very, very pro remake. I am pro requel. I think if you have a story to tell it. Don't tell me the original story again. Make it your own. You know, like I look at like Evil Dead 2013, Child's Play 2019. I look at those as very, very good remakes. They took the original idea, but they made it their own. There's two movies that I am extremely anti-remake, and that is Jaws and Back to the Future. Don't touch either one of those movies. You're not going to make them better. You're not going to add anything to the story that wasn't there before. They're perfect. They are just Back to the Future and Jaws are the two films where I'm just like, no, don't.
Yeah.
Do not touch them. They're phenomenal. Let a sleeping dog lie. You know, do not try to make extra money on these. You don't need the money. And Spielberg's already said no, that we're not doing that. So yay. But yeah, those are the two where I'm like, don't do this to me, please. So we've had various incarnations of Dracula throughout, you know, the history of television and literature. There's been, you know, many different books written about Dracula and the different forms of Dracula. So Bram Stoker's Dracula is how it started for you, Lourdes. But would you say that that's your favorite Dracula film, or is there another one that really, you know, captured you a little bit more than that one?
There's something that captured me a little bit more. I've also watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, produced by Joss Whedon. I like also watched that one around the same time that I watched Dracula, and that was like one of my favorite TV series. I've always gravitated towards vampire horror and vampire films in general. So yeah, that's like one of the very two things I remembered watching growing up. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, and like I said, vampires to me have always been a very important part of horror. Like I said, all the way back to Nosferatu and how important he was to starting off horror. So we've talked about your guys' first horror movies and what they mean to you. But now I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here at you for a second because my little buddy Ghostface is here and he has a question for you guys. So, Shay, you're going to get to cheat for a little bit because Lourdes is going to get the question first. Usually I split the questions up. You're both going to get asked the same question here. So we're going to start with you, Lourdes. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Lourdes? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
That's a tough one. Uh oh boy. Oh, let me think. Scream 1996.
You can't go wrong. And I've always said, whether you love or you hate Scream, there is no denying the impact that movie had on the horror genre. It completely rejuvenated the horror genre at a time where, you know, 94, 95, horror was really starting to tank a little bit. Scream came along and completely rejuvenated the genre. So I can't be upset with Scream at all because I think it's one of the most important horror movies of all time with what it did for horror at the time it came out. So Ghostface, I know I'm gonna ask her. Dude, give me a second. So all right, so now Shay, Ghostface has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Shay? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Oh no.
Which is funny because I always say this, like whenever I send people my interview questions, I purposely never send this question because I don't want you to think about it. I don't want you to have a day or two to be like, no, this is an on the spot question. So how about this, Shay? You're going on a plane and you can only take one horror movie with you to watch on your flight. What's the movie that you're going to take with you?
I think it's gonna be, oh my God. Like when I want to go with one movie, my brain is like, wait, this one. Oh my
Right.
God. So I guess one movie, and this might be really, I don't know how controversial it's gonna be or whatever, or just like mediocre, honestly, because a lot of people think this movie is mediocre, but it's one of my comfort movies when it comes to horror movies because I used to write for Screen Rant and I used to write in-depth articles about this. So I'm just gonna say Silent Hill 2006. right now. I'm gonna go with that. I think it's a fantastic adaptation, especially coming from being a huge fan of the video games. Those are also my favorite video games, horror video games of all time. I love the lore. I love all the messages and the meanings to it. I love the creature design because I also do creature design. So all of that has been a huge inspiration for me. And it's just like you have the beautiful score by Akira Yamaoka. I can't say the name. And it's female fronted the way that they adapted it. All of the main characters are females. And you also have Sean Bean, who doesn't die in the movie for once, which is different. You have it hits the mark on everything. You have the nurses, you have Pyramid Head. There's a lot of fantastic actors. Deborah, what's her name? Deborah I don't know. She was in David Cronenberg's Crash, which is another movie that I hated and then loved for reasons. But yeah, Silent Hill is just like a super comfort horror movie. And I know I'm gonna be knocking my head on the wall after this and being like, oh, I should have said something else, but I'm gonna be at peace with this for now.
I can't argue. Was I the biggest fan of the film? No, I wasn't, but I respected what it did. Me and my family just took a vacation to Centralia, the influence for the Silent Hill movie. And it was really cool to see, the smoke coming out of the ground and things like that. Like, it was a really cool thing. So Centralia is a town in Pennsylvania, and it had a mine fire that is still burning underneath the town. And the town is like smoking. It's a ghost town now. You can't go into the town, but you can see the smoke, and that was the inspiration for the film. So it was really cool to go out there and kind of get that influence. So I've had an amazing time talking to you ladies about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie. But now, before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question, and I'll start with you this time, Shay. We're going to bounce back to Jaws, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking Jaws on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing here is ranking Jaws on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Shay, what would your ranking of Jaws be?
For its influence, especially as a horror movie for me, I'd have to say it is a oh damn. I give it a solid 4 stars. 4 skulls. Okay.
And that's a great ranking. And same thing to you, Lourdes. We're not talking, again, not critically, but how much it affected you. Bram Stoker's Dracula, 0 skulls, not effective, 5 extremely effective. Lourdes, what would you give Bram Stoker's Dracula?
10,000 skulls.
I was gonna say, you're still making horror movies to this day about vampires, so the movie had to have some type of effect on you. So I want to say thank you to you ladies for coming out. And I know I said this at the beginning, guys, but I'm going to say it one more time. We're at the end of the 3rd act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have these amazing ladies' social media links down in the description, their Indiegogo link, their YouTube links. So please make sure, if you had the availability, to help out the Indiegogo. Not only are you helping to get perks, but you're helping artists make their art. There's nothing more important than that. So anything, little or big, is an extremely huge help on making a film. And please make sure you're, at the very minimum, follow them on social media, subscribe to their YouTube channels. That's free, and it shows your absolute tremendous support to what they're doing. So ladies, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.